Alright guys, welcome to Dino Dude. We're trying this. I've never filmed anything like this. I'm not one to be on camera, so bear with me. Hopefully this gets better over time. We are here today to discuss a pneumatic fuel system for your turbo bike. This is for blow-through carbureted bikes. The basic concept is you can lose a lot of weight and you can make things a lot simpler. Motorcycle carbs don't like a lot of base fuel pressure. So what you end up with is most regulators want to give you no less than 5 psi, which is fine with car carburetors and even bigger motorcycle carburetors. You can change the needles to stuff that'll take the pressure. But with these smaller guys on the smaller engines, so you Predator 212 guys and XR guys like me and whatnot, I mean anyone, Raider guys, even the GY6 guys, don't be afraid. Blow-through carbs are pretty easy. So let's go about this starting at the carb. At the carb, we have normal carburetor. Things I have done. Not related to this is I've gotten rid of the choke. That's a performance thing. I don't need a choke. So here is the vent. This is the float bowl vent. It comes down into my pitot tube. Simple hole. Hope you guys can see that. This is not a jet. It used to be a main jet. I plugged it with some solder. I stuck a silicone tube around it, and I jam it into the pitot tube, screw it tight, and it locks it in. Locks it into my charge pipe right there. Do make sure you put your blow-off valve between the turbo end and the pitot tube. Don't put it after the pitot tube. I made that mistake once. You can tell by the JB Weld. It will flood every time you get off the gas. So now here's how we get rid of the regulator, guys. And we make sure that base pressure is easily attainable. These things like 0.5 psi to 1.5 psi. They like gravity. So we're going to keep it like that. It's the OEM routing as far as your XR200s and most things. I think your GY6s and stuff have like a vacuum fuel pump that uses the pulsations to do it. Rip that off if that's something you got. Just make sure your fuel tank is above the level of the carburetor. Route your fuel line like you normally would from the petcock. Let's see if we can't go over and see it. Yep, right there. And then at the top of your tank, you need some way to pressurize it. This is plugged. There's an O-ring in here. This is sealed. And on our plenum, we just run a tube. Tube with a fitting, nice hose clamp. And that gets the job done. This setup so far has seen 36 psi. Just a normal plastic dirt bike fuel tank. It's ABS. It's real thick. It's real solid. Now we are upping the boost, and we're going to be doing some stuff to this to guarantee it takes the pressure. I do pressure test my tanks, and I do recommend that you pressure test your tanks. That being said, try to go a little bit higher than you want in boost. If you want 30 psi boost, go to 45 on your tank. Just hook up your air compressor to it, rig it, whatever you got to do, get a gauge on it. Make sure it holds it too. You don't want leaks. I will recommend, I was using a single 3/8 line going to my plenum from my tank. Don't do that. It works. It's fine for drag racing. It gets a little lean in third gear. Then it richens up by fourth. It fills the bowl back up. It's not significant. I'm adding a second one. That'll fix it. I'm upping the boost, so the pressure differential is going to hike a little bit faster on that end, on the plenum end, than it will in the tank, because the line is the restriction. So we got to make sure this restriction is not too much. Initially, when I was setting this up, and this is a really good recommendation for everyone, hook up a boost gauge, a vacuum boost gauge, something like this, something accurate. I mean, it can be a sync gauge. It doesn't have to be a boost gauge. Like it can be one of these. These are a little bit preferred because they go both ways. But hook it up. I was measuring pressure in this line on the pitot tube, so I knew what the bowl pressure was. I was also measuring pressure in the gas tank, and I was measuring boost pressure from this reference that I added to the carb behind the throttle, so it sees vacuum. I also was measuring back pressure in the exhaust manifold. This is something that's more important for performance, not so much for you guys that just want something boosted. All right. Generally speaking, you want to keep the back pressure lower than boost. It's hard on a single cylinder. It's really hard, especially a high revving one. We've managed to do it through a lot of work. It's not a simple thing, not an easy endeavor. Stay tuned for more, guys. I can't show you too much, but got parts strewn about. There's a turbo in my room in pieces. Getting this hybrid together. I will show you guys this. It's a big oil pump, as opposed to little tiny guy. This is the one that was in the bike. There you go. That was one we ran for a long time. Tiny little thing. And I'll just set it there. See how much bigger that is. It's about 1,000 times more volume. It's a lot thicker. Some custom drive works in there and whatnot, but it's okay. It is kind of necessary for these roller bearing motors if you want to go with boost. Turbos don't like low oil pressure. We do have an internal oil pressure regulator. It's actually in the clutch cover. But back to the fuel system. That's the reason you guys are here. I do have a couple baffles in here. I just snuck them into the gas cap. You might be able to see them. Let's see. It's too dark. You can see the plate right there. Gas has to go that way. It can't go this way. But this makes a big difference. I will say that I did run it without a baffle, and I never had any issues, but I also didn't fill the tank up more than halfway. It's not a bad idea. That's all I'm saying. I do plan for the new setup to add an inline catch can along with those baffles, just in case. I figured once we start getting up into the 50-60 psi boost range, it's not exactly improbable that fuel is going to try and splash back. And it's a drag bike, so we don't care if it goes into a catch can. You can always just empty it back in the tank or in the trash. All right, guys. Did I cover everything? Oh, jetting. You should end up with the same jetting you would have for a pod. Go 2 sizes smaller on the main. This should be about there. Start off with the same stuff you had, open carb, or with the pod, a good pod, not a shitty pod. You guys know. If you don't, jet more bikes, you'll figure it out. And I say that because you want to start a little bit on the rich side. A wideband O2 is a must. And now I've seen people do this completely wrong, like just backwards altogether. Grab a spare head. So, I've seen a lot of guys that's not really a good way to do this. I've seen a lot of guys take the exhaust manifold and you'll put your O2 sensor in here and then your turbo right here. Your O2 sensor is going to go bad. Okay? It can't take this. Put it in the downpipe after the turbo. I know there's no turbo here. Just imagine. It's right here. Big snail. Downpipe. That's where you want it. Do make sure you have enough downpipe for what you're doing. You don't want fresh air going backwards into the system. It is a single cylinder. It's a big pulse every 720 degrees. It will cause a very high pressure in one instance, and then right before it opens again, it's going to be very low. Normally, air will be trying to rush back in. That being said, camshafts with a lot of duration do help this, especially on the exhaust side. Let me see here. I'm not trying to give away too many details. Here's an OEM cam. Well, I wouldn't say it's OEM, it's been regrown. And then here is a bigger regrind. Very similar specs. This is going to be the OEM slight regrind cam. It's got a little bit more lift, no more duration though. Here's going to be my newest grind. A lot more lift, a lot more duration. But you really can't tell a whole lot from the eyeball. The eyeball test doesn't show much. But what I will tell you guys, and there is a ridiculous amount of misinformation when it comes to camshafts on these small engines. I don't care if you're a Predator guy, I don't care if you're a GY6 guy, you've probably heard it. People advertise lift at the cam. I don't care about lift at the cam, guys. You need a spare head or the head you're using with the rockers. Put the cam in, put some valves in, measure it. Measure how much the valves move with a dial indicator. I measure at the rockers. That's this motor. Your motor might vary. Depends what you guys are running. I think that about covers it. If I miss something, I'll try to edit it in. I don't know what I'm doing. Give me a go.